Okay. Recording in progress. Okay, I'm going to share screen. Share. Okay. All right. So let me back it up. I'm going to take a bite of quesadilla. Mm-hmm. Okay. We, oh, it's tasty. We did brushes, right? We learned how to make, our own custom brushes, like a scatter brush, or take a piece of artwork and have it stretch along a path, recolor it. Things like that. What else did we do? We did the blob brush, so the blob brush, um, you're painting fills instead of strokes, so you can make shapes out of that. We did, okay, so what I'm left with here, I want to show you how to do patterns. We need to go over gradients. And then very important, something you're going to use a lot is a clipping mask. And I will go through those one by one. So way back when we were learning about transforms, so remember all the transformations that you can make. You can move something, you can rotate something, you can scale something, you can skew or shear. Am I missing one? I feel like I'm missing one. And then once you make a transformation, you can, sorry, I've been coughing all day. I don't know what is going on. Once you make a transformation, you can repeat it, right? By hitting Command D, and it, so if you move it, like if I take this right here, I'm going to move it holding Option and Shift, and then I hit Command D, and I make a whole bunch of them. This is setting me up for making some sort of like a pattern background. But there's a more powerful way to do this in Illustrator, and it's called patterns. So let me expand this, do that. Okay, let me go back. Okay. So we did symbols, right? Where you take some sort of vector design, you turn it into a symbol by dragging it into the symbols library here, and then you can use it over and over again. And then if you edit it once, it updates all of the other instances of that symbol. The pattern function is kind of similar. So I'm gonna come in here and zoom in a little bit. So I'm gonna take this design right here. I'm gonna go to object menu. Gonna go down to pattern. I'm gonna choose make. Okay. All right. What I'm seeing here is a preview of what the pattern is going to look. I have to create the pattern first, and then I apply the pattern to an area or an object or something like that. So automatically this pattern options dialog box opens up, and we've got various, first of all, we can name our pattern, which is very helpful. I'm going to call this flowers. Okay. And by default, you get a grid. So they're just sort of stacked side by side, one on top of each other. But there are other configurations that we can choose. So there's brick by row. And what that does is they're still stacked on top of each other, but there's like an offset. They're not lined up perfectly on the vertical axis. It's sort of like in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out. There's also, that's brick by row. There's also brick by column. So it does something more like that. You get a pattern that way. And then we've got hex by column, so hexagon. So notice like right now I'm in brick by column and we see the center, the main vector illustration that we're working with has like a bounding box around it, a rectangle. If we go hex by column, all of a sudden that changes and it becomes a little bit more compact. It's really taking into account all of the space on, instead of just 4 sides, it's breaking it up into 6 sides and calculating the distance that way. And then there's also, this is hex by column, and then there's also hex by row. A little bit different. Just play around with them and see which one you like. And then right here, we have some numbers we can play with. So I'm going to click into this little field right here, and it's measuring things in millimeters. That's interesting. I'm going to use my up and down arrow tools, arrow keys, and it's adding and subtracting. So you can adjust the spacing. I'm adjusting the width right now. And then I could click on the height one and I can adjust that. And I can spread them out that way. Just a quick tip. If you want to increase by more than like 1 digit at a time, if you hold down shift, it'll go by tens. So you can move faster that way. There's also a tool to do this. It's right here in the corner, right underneath where it says pattern options in that upper corner there. And you scroll over and it says pattern tile tool. This is kind of like a hidden tool in Illustrator. It doesn't appear anywhere else, like in the toolbar. But if we click on that and activate it, then I can actually go straight to this hexagon and manipulate it with the mouse. So if you don't want to do it numerically, you just want to eyeball it, you can play around with this tool and get some sort of pattern like that. I'm going to do more like that. I'm going to turn that tool off because I kind of like to go by numbers and be a little more exact and, you know, mm-hmm. Now, if for some reason your artwork is overlapping, someone really scrunch this in like this. If for some reason your artwork is overlapping, let me zoom in so we can see, like you can see some of them. Maybe that's a little too much. Let me do a little bit like that. Okay. So there's some question here about like, how do you control what is overlapping what? Well, we go down a little bit further in this dialog box. You see the word overlap? And there's 4 options there. The first one says left in front, and then there's right in front. So click between those two, and you'll see what happens. It prioritizes either the right or the left as being on top. And then the second two is the top and the bottom. So if I click on bottom in front, then that top flower appears, which I think is a nicer, nicer composition. I don't really want them spaced out. I mean, squished in that much. You have some other controls here. Right now you can control like how the preview is presenting itself to you. So right now it's a 5x5. I could change that to 7x3 or, whatever I want. 1x1 and not very helpful really, but you do a 3x3 or it's just, this isn't how the pattern is going to appear in the end. It's just how you're viewing the preview. So, they're just giving you options. There's also this option here that dims all the copies to 70%. So if you turn that off, you get a real sense of what that pattern is going to look like. I should have mentioned I posted this file in Canvas. I'm so sorry. I should have mentioned that. So if you wanted to follow along, you can download it, and maybe it's too late now and I screwed up. All right, sorry. So I kind of like to see it dimmed so I know which individual ones I'm working with. So when I'm done here, I like my pattern. I think it looks good. Right up here in this gray bar, underneath the control bar at the top, it says cancel and it says done. Up here, I'm gonna click on done. Okay, it just brings me back here. So like I said, we weren't actually designing with a pattern, we were setting up the pattern to use later. So now, if you open up your swatches panel, which is this little guy right here underneath it's the third one down on the right, the swatches panel. There's underneath all the colors, you're gonna see that's where it places your pattern swatches. If you don't see that, click on what looks like a library, like a bunch of stacked books, and go down to patterns, or just go to go to patterns, basic graphics, decorative nature. I mean, there are swatch palettes of patterns that are preset for you if you wanted to get into them. I think what I'm looking for here is show all swatches. Where is that? Crap. Somewhere there's an option that says show all swatches, but you can open the swatch pattern library. So now if I want to use this pattern, it functions as a fill. So you need some sort of shape some sort of object to um to use it as a fill. So I'm going to make just a rectangle here. And I already have it selected. So it just automatically filled it. But if I didn't, like, I would just make a plain old rectangle, and I would go over to my swatches. I would click on it, and then it would fill, it would fill my rectangle. And then if you want to make edits to it, very easy. Just go to that swatch in your swatches palette, double click on it, and you come back to this preview, and then I can, spread it out a little bit. And then again up here, done, click on done. And now it has updated my pattern. So it's a lot more versatile than just step and repeat, step and repeat, step and repeat, Command D, Command D. Now, that said, we need to talk about transformations in patterns. So you'll notice if I have the direct selection tool and I click on the rectangle with the pattern and I resize it, it's totally skewing my pattern. Like, what if I didn't want that? What if I just want more pattern to be revealed? I'll show you a different way to do it. Instead of using the bounding box with the direct selection tool, what if I used not general selection tool. Direct selection tool is the white arrow with no plus sign, okay, where it allows you to click on just one point, right? So if I do that and I just click on one point, something totally different happens. Now I'm adjusting the object with the pattern, but the pattern remains. So if I wanted to extend this, if I clicked on one corner, I could click and drag around both, or I could click and shift click. And now I'm just using the arrow key with the shift down, and I'm extending the container. So I'm going to click and drag and grab these two side points. That didn't work. Grab these two. Yeah, there we go. And then I'm using my arrows here to move that around. And then I could potentially, fill, I can, it's like laying more wallpaper down, right? You want more wallpaper, but the section that you've already laid on the wall has to stay there. You just want to add more sections. And that's kind of like what we're doing here. So that is transforming the object, not necessarily transforming the pattern, but we can transform the pattern. So going back, a few weeks ago, we did all of the transformations. We can apply any of those to this pattern. So let's say I wanted to scale it, like I wanted these to be larger or smaller. I can click on the scale tool, or I can just hit S. And before I do anything, there's one thing we need to do, because when we're transforming something, we have two options. We can transform either the object or we can transform the fill, the patterned fill of the object. So I'm going to hit return and I get this dialog box right here. So I can have a little bit more control. And down here, we have two options. There's transform objects, the object being the rectangle that has the fill. And then there's an option for transform patterns. So like if I unclick transform patterns, then the pattern is the same size, but only the object has reduced. I'm going to choose transform objects. And now I can go in and adjust this, you know, however I want. I can make it a lot bigger, can make it a lot smaller. And then I can just hit OK. I don't know if I actually made any difference there. I kind of went back to what I had, didn't I? Let's do scale. So S for scale, or you can click on the scale tool here. And then again, I've got it selected. I'm gonna hit return and I get this box. And oh no, we did scale already. I was gonna do rotate. Never mind. Rotate. R for rotate. Yes, R for rotate. It's selected. Hit return. And now I'm going to choose transform patterns. And then I can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Rotating it. Like so. So it's very powerful. Any questions? Am I going too fast? Are you able to keep up? No? Yes? Well, it's all being recorded. You can always go back, right? You can always go back to the recording. Oh. Okay. Yeah, that's about it. With transforming patterns. Okay. Moving on. I want to go over gradients. Okay, gradients are fun. They make your artwork really, you know, pop and add dimension and dynamism and, you know, like just throw them here, throw them there, try them out, or don't, stay flat. Flat's good. We like flat. Flat's nice. Okay, so I'm going to start a new file here. Letter do. Okay. I'm gonna make a rectangle. So there's various different types of gradients. In general, traditionally, there's kind of been two: a linear gradient and a radial gradient. But Illustrator has also introduced a freeform gradient. Wild, crazy freeform gradient, and we'll play with that too. But let's start simple. So I mean, I think I've been clear about these attributes over here. You see the white square on top, and then it's full, you know, it's solid white, and then you've got the black rectangle underneath, the top one being the fill, and then the bottom one being the stroke. Okay, and so if I have this selected and then I go to my swatches, I can pick different colors and yeah, you're all hopefully familiar with this by now. But we can also add gradients, and there's a few of them here to start with, and you can open more of them if you go down to that little library book tool. You say gradients, and there's just a whole bunch of different collections of types of gradients that you can play around with. And you can open those up and add them, slide them into your palette and play around with them. But there's a couple here. I'm just going to start with a really basic one, just the white to black. Okay. So this is a gradient that is changing from, I'm going to get rid of that stroke. I don't really, no. Here we go. I'm going to get rid of that stroke. I don't really want that stroke. So it's very simple. Starts out white, goes to black. So how do we control this? How do we customize this to make our own personalized gradients? Well, right down here and on the right hand menu palettes, boom, there's a gradient tool or palette. It's right underneath the strokes panel. It looks like a gradient. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to pull that out. Okay. Come on. Come out. Come out. Yes. Okay. So here it is. And I've got, I clicked on the bar right there. And the components of the gradient that we are usually manipulating, you have stops and you have, I think they're called midpoints. Okay, so the circle right here at the bottom of this gradient menu is the white stop. And notice it says location 0%. That's how it thinks of gradients, is in terms of percentage, like how far along the length of the gradient have you gone. And in this case, it's only gone 0%. And then the black is 100%. And then this midpoint right here, this diamond at the top, I can adjust. How come I'm not seeing a preview here? Oh, I don't have, I have to have the fill selected, sorry. I had it on stroke. So as I change this dot, the distribution of the color can be customized, and I can also move the stops so that I have a lot of white, and then just at the very end, it blends into black. I can also double click on these stops and I get this color mixer, or I can click on the swatches and get swatches, and I can, pick and choose a color from there. I can also use this color picker eyedropper tool. So if I had some artwork somewhere else on my artboard and I wanted to match that color, I could choose the eyedropper tool and then go click on that artwork and match the color there. Notice what just happened. I clicked on that and all of a sudden I got this. The gradient, damn it, what's it called? Oh, there's a name for it. Oh, geez. I should have written it down. Gradient augmentation, no. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, we're gonna call it the gradient tool. All right. Let's just go back to, how do I get out of that? I don't want the eyedropper tool anymore. I'm gonna undo. No. How do I get out of there? Oh, this button right here switches the direction of the gradient. So now the black is on the other side. You could do that. Well, anyway, it brings up this sort of interactive gradient controller that you can manipulate like right on the shape itself, which is kind of nice, you know. I mean, either way, whatever you're comfortable with. You can also create, you don't have to have just 2 colors for your gradient. You can have like 5 different colors. It blends from one to the other to the other. An easy way to do that is like, I'm going to take this black and I'm going to click and I'm going to hold down Option and go all the way over to the other side. And that duplicated that black stop. And actually, I think black is a little harsh. I'm going to go with like a dark gray. I don't remember which gray I picked, but we'll choose that one. And then I can play around with these midpoints here and create something that looks kind of like a tube or a cylinder or something like that. In order to, the easiest way to get that bar that we were just manipulating is to hit G and it comes up automatically. And there's other things you can do here. So I've got these endpoints too that I can pull out. Like your gradient doesn't have to start and finish right on the shape. I could go inward on the shape. I could go outward on the shape. And also if I hover over it, I get this like a rotation little icon. So I can change the angle of the gradient. So, sometimes if you're looking for like a metallic kind of, ooh, Jer, what just happened? Oh, okay. A metallic kind of effect, something like that, use some gold or something, you can create something. Sometimes it gets a little cheesy, you gotta play around with it, but I've created that. And then if you want to save your gradient, if you go to, how do I do that? Is it this one here? I need to get back to I need to get out of the color picker. This hasn't happened before. I'm not familiar here. Well, there is a way to, oh, here we go. Yeah. I chose the little drop down on the gradient swatch there, and there's a add to swatches little icon, so you can save your gradients and use them later, and that's handy. So it's a linear gradient because it's literally, we're just taking a line, right, and we're just stretching that line out, defining a few colors here and there, but it's a line. It's not a curve, it's not a circle, it's nothing else, it's a line. Let's talk about radial gradients. Close this. And a good example of their usage is in something like a circle, maybe. Can you make a circle? So that circle picked up on the gradient that I already had selected. Okay. But I want to do something else. So I'm going to choose, where did my, oh geez, I lost my gradient palette. Okay. Choosing gradients. The next one over under type, says type at the top, very small. And the next one over, it looks like a circle and you hover and it says radial gradient. And that's what you get. Now I've got the same gradient that I was working with before that starts out dark and then goes light and then goes dark again. I kind of don't want that. I'm going to get rid of, and I'm going to switch it. Okay. Yeah, that's better. That's more what I was looking for. So press G to get our little bar here. And the same thing is true. I've got these stops I can play with. I've got a midpoint. I've got some, but now I've got some other things I can play with. Look at this over here. I can control the size of the gradient, and it doesn't affect the size of the object. That's very important. Up here, I can actually go for like an ellipse if I wanted to. I can, switch it up there. I can rotate it. So I'm hovering over the sort of perimeter of the gradient ellipse, and I get this rotate tool. So I can really control, I can really create some interesting shadows and highlights by playing around with this this gradient bar here. And then again, I could add other colors if I wanted to and just go crazy. You can just really mess around with it and have fun. Okay, so that is a radial gradient going out from the center. Okay, what is this freeform gradient all about? Let's see. Oh, apparently the gradient tool appears in 2 different places. Okay, interesting. All right. Okay, freeform gradients are kind of nuts. So first you gotta make a shape because it's a fill, so you gotta fill it with something. I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna go over to my swatches. I'm gonna choose this gradient right here. Okay, yellow, orangey, beautiful gradients. I'm gonna open up my gradient palette. Look at this one. This one is 5 different colors that it's going between. So under type here, we did linear. We did radial. Now let's hit freeform. Crazy, what just happened? Now we don't have a line. We don't have a circle. We just have these stops that we can just move around and manipulate. It's insane. You make some really cool, like, backgrounds, and you have the same kind of control with the radius and all of that. So you can create some really crazy, really beautiful gradient backgrounds this way. If you feel so inclined. Right now there's a draw mode here. It's set to draw points. That's usually what I do, but there's also this option of lines, which I haven't used a ton, but let's play with it. I'm going to click on one of the stops and then drag out and click on another one. And then it creates like this curve. It's kind of like the anchor tool. So you can actually very carefully, oh, I lost it. G, okay. You can very carefully manipulate. I'm not sure how to describe how this really changes it technically. I mean, it's making changes. It's just a different effect. I haven't used it a ton, so you'll just have to play with it. I know you can change these right now. They're like, it's kind of like the pen tool. If you hold down option and you click, it turns it into like a corner point, anchor point instead of a line. I don't know. Play around with it. See what you come up with. There's also one more gradient building tool that I feel like this freeform gradient has kind of replaced, but you might find it interesting, and it's a gradient mesh. And it's over in the toolbar over here. It looks like a wavy grid kind of rectangle. I'm going to click on it and I'm going, oh wait, first I have to make a shape. And now I'm going to click on it. So I've created a gradient mesh here. I haven't done this in a while. I didn't really practice this, but I thought I'd show it to you. I'm going to click, and now look, I'm making points, and it's making like a grid, and each of these grid is its own anchor point. So now, if I click on one of these anchor points, and let's see what happens if I double click on, no, and then I click on a color. There, it just applied the color to that anchor point. I've seen some really beautiful artwork created this way, like maybe like skin tones on a face, you can create, and you play with these anchor points to manipulate the look and feel. So you can make kind of like these wavy gradients that are really interesting. And then I could click on another one and add a different color and play with those. and, just manipulate it. And sometimes you get something funky if you go kind of out of bounds like that, but it's kind of nebulous, kind of spacey. Um, anyway, that's the gradient mesh tool. Look it up, uh, look up, you know, examples of things that people have done with the gradient mesh tool because it is really impressive. Okay. Okay, moving on. I want one more thing and then we'll work. Okay. I told you I'd give you time. Last thing I want to go over is the reset my workspace. The clipping path. So I don't know if you guys know what a clipping path is, but it's kind of this idea of taking a piece of art, whether it's a vector illustration or a photograph or something like that, and cropping it into some sort of shape. It could just be a rectangle or it could be a more complicated organic shape. As long as you have a closed path, it's kind of like a cookie cutter. Like you can take an illustration, take your path, and then just like clunk, get rid of the edges, and everything fits nicely inside of there. So let me demonstrate this. How should I do this? I'll make kind of like a striped so I'm gonna just make these different colors. I'm just picking colors at random. Hmm. I'm just going to take this and okay. All right. So say I wanted this, I wanted it to be in a different shape other than a rectangle. First thing I'm going to do is, go to my layers. Oh, I want to draw some sort of shape on top of here. So I'm gonna go to my layers and I don't want to accidentally move these bars around. So I'm gonna lock it down in the layers and add a new layer on top with the pen tool. Where's my pen tool? And draw something. Okay. Okay. I need to so what I'm doing here is I'm gonna use this blob shape. That's gonna be my clipping mask. So I don't care what color it is because the fill's gonna disappear. It's not a graphic unto itself. It's just a frame for whatever I put inside of it, whether it's a photo or text or anything. So I need to unlock the bottom layer. And then I need to select everything. And it's always the shape that is on the very top that becomes the clipping mask. So there's different ways to do this. I can right click and go down where it says make clipping mask. Click that and boom, there we go. I've made a clipping mask. Now notice that the layers have been merged. Okay, important to know that can affect how you've organized your file. But as I roll over these, see those rectangles, those bars are still there. So I can click on it, double click again, and I can isolate anything inside of the clipping mask. And then I can just double click on somewhere outside of it to go back. I can use the direct selection tool. And I can, find an anchor point somewhere like here, and I can adjust the object, and I'm not making any edits to the content, just the object itself. The other way to do it, there's a shortcut, very, very handy shortcut. Instead of right clicking and using the menu, you can just hit Command 7. Boom, Command 7. There you go. Just like that. So for you, for your map, you might want to think about, once you're happy with your layout, see how all these streets are sticking out at the end, the river's sticking out, and if you want to clean it up, you can always give it a clipping mask. So if I go here, I make a box again, it doesn't matter about the filler stroke, it's all going to disappear. I need to unlock those layers. I'm just going to select all, hit Command 7, and it's cleaned it up very nicely. And now I don't have all that other stuff around there. It all depends. Like if I were creating a map that I wanted full bleed, which means the image, I'm gonna send it to a printer and they're gonna print it, and I want the whole paper to be covered. I don't want any white edges or anything like that. I want full bleed. Bleed is when, you print something a little bit larger than the size you want it, and then the printer's gonna trim the edges off. In that case, I wouldn't actually want to do this because I'm not giving them, they need a little bit extra around the edges to trim. So, but maybe this map is a part of a larger layout or poster or something like that, and I want clean edges. So I'm going to create a clippy mask. And we do this in Photoshop too. You can create clippy masks, and we do it all the time. So yeah, and you can always release it. You can click on it, right click and say undo make clippy mask, and then it goes back to the original design. So. Okay, that's all I have. Let's work for another half hour. Okay. And if you just call me over if you have any questions or you just want feedback, on what you're doing. Like, how should you organize your layers? How do you know, how should you approach this or that? There's always like 5 different ways to do things. So, we can like brainstorm on what the best solution is. Okay. Okay. So we've got today to work on it. And then Tuesday to work on it. I'm gonna try to give you all class time on Tuesday to work on it. I will be due on Thursday, and then we'll move on. I'm not totally sure what the next. I don't know. I gotta look at the calendar and see, like, do we still have time with Illustrator, or do we need to start getting into Photoshop? And, it all depends on how much InDesign we're gonna do. And we're cramming a lot of stuff into this class, man. Cramming a lot of stuff in here. So, okay. All right, I'm gonna end the Zoom and let's get to work.